not just supplements and functional foods, legal developments, ingredient news, education, inspiration, entertainment, insider in the afternoon.
Everybody, welcome to another edition of Insider in the Afternoon. Todd Runestad here, senior editor at naturalproductsinsider.com. And we've got a cool show for you today. And it's coming at you from my phone because my internet service provider is down. It's kind of a weird week for the interwebs, but we're going to go with it. Hollywood in your pocket, as they say. And so today we're going to do a couple things. We're going to finish the show off with some video interviews that we shot at Natural Products Expo East in Philly a week or two ago. And that's really cool. And then we're also going to dig into SupplySide West. Trade shows are back. Very excited about that. The vibe on the show floor in Philly was magnifique. I think everyone appreciates that. I suppose the first one out of the gate was the pop-up, the SupplySide pop-up event in Phoenix a couple months ago, and that went very well. The vibe there was humming along. So really cool stuff. We're going to start off today with our legal correspondent, Josh Long. There are some really interesting stories that have been posted by Josh this week on naturalproductsinsider.com. Josh, tune in. How are you, man?
Hey, buddy. How you doing?
Good. You must be feeling pretty good. The Red Sox beat the Yankees in the wild card game.
Patriots lost, but hey, Brady beat
them.
But
Brady won. Like, don't you feel okay about that? That was sort of like a win-win. Wasn't that a win-win?
Okay, it's a win-loss. It balances out. It's good. It's all good.
Yeah. All right. So, hey, a couple stories. One of them, interesting story about GRAS, which last I heard, was it Blumenthal, Bob Marley, generally rocking a spliff? Is that it? Generally recognized as safe? Bob Marley was dead quite a few years before Deshay. And was GRAS around before Deshay?
I believe GRAS has been around for generations.
It was. Okay. So Bob Marley could have said that. So what's the story there on Insider? Tell us.
Well, consumer groups are among the critics that have said FDA's GRAS rule, generally recognized as safe rule, has allowed the food supply to be full of ingredients that haven't been evaluated by FDA. They've been covertly evaluated by food manufacturers. This is the argument anyways. And thus the consumers, the American public, has no idea if the food ingredients are safe. So some groups sued FDA after it published its final GRAS rule in 2016. And we finally got an opinion from a federal district court judge last week who granted summary judgment in favor of the government. In other words, the government prevailed, the plaintiffs lost, and the judge basically said that the FDA was, there was nothing wrong with what FDA did in terms of publishing its rule. And he said the remedy lies with Congress. And I'll just read this quote. This pretty much sums it up. I decline plaintiff's invitation to rewrite the statute. The remedy plaintiffs seek lies with Congress, not me. And Congress has chosen to act despite the increase in the number of food additives over the last 5 decades. So that's the bottom line there. The reason it's relevant to the supplement industry, as we all know, is a lot of food ingredients are presumably go through the GRAS pathway and end up in dietary supplements, and thus they don't go through the new dietary ingredient notification pathway. They go through the GRAS pathway.
Is that what was that their sort of game? Like reading in between the lines, was this like another attempt to more strongly regulate the supplements industry, or did they have a beef just against some of the ingredients being introduced into the food world?
This was way broader than the supplement industry. This has to do with just food ingredients being available to the American public. And again, the idea or the criticism is that the agency isn't evaluating all of these GRAS ingredients. They have reviewed over 1,000 though ingredients since the late 90s, and they have essentially had no questions with the vast majority of these ingredients. I think it's 76% of the ingredients that they've evaluated, the GRAS ingredients, they haven't had any questions. In other words, they haven't objected.
Yeah. So I'm then taking it back to supplements. Is that good news that supplements interests can still comfortably go the GRAS route, even the self-GRAS route? Except maybe if you want to go into big food, then you might want to get the FDA notice of no objection.
I mean, there's perspectives, but I think definitely there's a chunk of industry that would see it as a win, right? If they would say, hey, there's no problem. The ingredients in our products are safe. We're going through the GRAS pathway. No harm, no foul. So I think a lot of them will probably view it as a win. Others that are critical of the GRAS pathway would view it differently.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. Hey, so let's move on to another story that you published that was about Senator Dick Durbin from Illinois, who has long been on this campaign to more strongly regulate the supplements industry. So what's the story that just happened with Senator Dick Durbin?
Well, according to my industry sources anyways, several sources, Senator Durbin's office is working on draft legislation to require that dietary supplements be listed with FDA. This is an FDA proposal over the last couple of years. They say that if we don't know what dietary supplement products are in the market, we cannot effectively regulate and police the market. And so his office is reportedly working on legislation that would require dietary supplements to be listed with FDA. His office did not respond to my inquiry confirming this information, but my sources are very credible. I have no reason to believe it's not accurate. The devil's in the details, right, Todd? And we don't know the details of this draft legislation. So we'll just have to, hopefully something will come out in the next couple of months and we'll see what it looks like.
Well, and I think a little historical look back, Dick Durbin has been, I think it was about 20 years ago, he introduced the Dietary Supplement Safety Act, which had two components to it. One was this very thing, a product registry. And so here he is going at it again. And what's notable to me is the other part of that Dietary Supplement Safety Act was that he wanted a pre-approval of any stimulant ingredient. There was concern about stimulant ingredients that was led at the time, 20 years ago, by ephedra. Now, ephedra soon went on to be banned by the FDA. So Durbin did get, he got half his pie with that. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I wasn't around in those days, but yeah, he's definitely been involved in supplements for a long time. And I believe he was one of the lawmakers who spearheaded the law that requires manufacturers to report serious adverse events associated with their supplements to FDA. Although a lot of the industry groups say they actually were in support of that law. A lot of industry groups oppose further legislation to regulate industry, but at least what they say now is they all were in support of that bill.
All right, so Senator Dick Durbin will continue his tilting at windmills, and he's got a pretty good success rate. Takes a little bit of time, but he seems to ultimately kind of get what he's looking for. So, for all the industry kvetching, it looks like it could happen. So thanks, Josh. I really appreciate you joining us here. Now, let's turn it around. We're going to open it up a little more. We have Sandra the A, Sandy Almendarez, and Steve O. Myers here joining us right now. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what you can find on naturalproductsinsider.com. And that's really there's a new digital issue out, which is What's Hot at SupplySide West, which is coming up in just a couple of weeks. And hopefully we'll see you there on the show floor in the conference arena. And so Sandy and Steve, join us. How are you guys today?
Great.
Awesome. So, what's hot at SupplySide West?
Everything's hot. I'm hot. You're hot. We're all hot. Is that enough?
Oh, that's hot. Let's get into specific. How do you love me? Let us count the ways. Let's start with, any good conference has to have a keynote speaker to kind of, set the agenda, set the mood, set the message. Sandy, what do you know about the keynote speaker here at SupplySide coming up?
Yeah. Hi, Todd. Thanks so much for inviting me to join Insider in the afternoon to talk about one of my favorite subjects, SupplySide West.
Yeah.
And I'm super excited for our keynote this year. His name is Simon T. Bailey, and just listening to him, he's so full of inspiration that you just like want to go out and conquer the world after you listen to him.
Huh.
He spent a lot of his time, his working life before he was a keynote speaker and an author at Disney, and really creating culture there and the magic of Disney. Like, don't we all love that? So let's bring that a little bit to SupplySide West.
And his name is Bailey. Did he work
Yes.
with the circus too? I mean, I can't help but think Disney circus. Maybe
Let me check my source. I cannot confirm that.
we can neither confirm or deny. But
No.
anyway, so what's his message going to be? What is the inspiration here?
Yeah, so it's called Brand the Moment, establish a culture where everyone matters. And in this time, this past year and a half, 2 years of working from home and just the amazing amount of growth that we've had in our industries, people are working overtime, overkill, and we want to make sure that our companies are taking care of their colleagues, their employees. I mean, we are in the health and nutrition industry, but how healthy is our workforce? And so Simon's going to come in and talk to leaders at these companies, and you can be a leader even if you don't have direct reports, but leaders at this company to talk about how we can attract, activate, and advance employees within our workforce. We're part of this great resignation. A lot of companies are losing really great talent as people are moving around and looking to see what career paths they want to take. So as you're onboarding new employees or keeping the ones that you really want to keep, how are you making sure that they feel like they matter and are engaged and really boosting your business? So I'm really excited to hear him.
That's cool. And so I guess we should point out that to see Mr. Bailey, you got to be there in person in Vegas. But we do have a virtual component. Like for those people who aren't going to make it to the show or aren't going to make it to that event, you could still hang out on your phone in your hotel room bed. There's some virtual programming. What do you know about that? What's going to be available so people can watch on their phone or their computer?
Yeah, so we will be live streaming 4 of our workshops to SupplySide Network 365. That does take an added virtual pass that you'll have to purchase to get those 4 sessions. But those sessions focus on microbiome, plant-based, immune health, and esports.
Very cool. Esports. When I think sports, I think Steve Myers. Steve, what do you know about esports? Are you running that game or what?
I am the MC of that game for sure, but I went out and got some fantastic, highly knowledgeable speakers that are really going to be the stars of that game. So before the pandemic, we touched on esports in different ways. We had some cognitive performance. We had a little tidbit in the sports workshop a couple of years back. But this time we wanted to go all in, right? SupplySide's back, let's go all in. So we're going to have a deeper session where we look at the science, especially the neuroscience that drives esports performance, as well as their other nutritional needs. And we're gonna have a panel of scientists, and then we'll have a panel of esports nutrition brands, and to talk a little bit about that market and how to reach that market. And then we'll have a little market data stuff. So yeah, we're going all in on esports.
And so when I think esports, I think gamers. Is that kind of the same thing, or is that something a little different?
It is. You have competitive gamers or esport athletes, e-athletes. There's so many different terms for this sort of growing, rapidly growing segment, but it's all the same. I even learned something from one of our speakers that colleges, you think of Alabama and their great football team, but lots of colleges actually have esports teams. I did not know that until the speaker told me.
Huh, that's wild. That is wild. So then there's lots of other, I'm actually running a couple sessions. There's one on supply chain considerations during COVID, which is a big issue across lots of industries. And so it's also affecting us in the supplements world. There was like a great boom of immunity ingredients, and so there was a rush for that. And then suppliers had to source that. And then all of a sudden, immunity kind of pulled back from its big spike at the beginning of COVID. So it's really caused supply chains they've been compelled to become elastic and hopefully not break. And so there's lots of issues to discuss there. there's going to be another one, another session that I'm emceeing is on hemp, mostly beyond CBD. CBD, of course, is a thing, but we can still talk about hemp powders, complementary ingredients to supercharge formulations, safety and quality. There's even a session on Delta 8 THC, which is kind of big and hot. That's happening in the larger hemp world, and lots of opportunities there. The business case thereof, and of course, legal and regulatory. There's lots of other programs that are also going to be at SupplySide West, and you can find them on at the digital magazine on naturalproductsinsider.com. I just looked just before, and it's right below Josh's GRAS story. Is that so? Everyone, you should go and check that out. It covers a lot of the other what's hot things in things like beverages and investors and claim substantiations, all the things to make you a little smarter, a little savvier, a little bit of a better person at what you do. And so Steve and Sandy, thanks for giving us just a little glimpse under the tent. I can say that, right?
Todd, I'm sorry, and I know we probably have to wrap up, but I don't want to leave this conversation without talking about FINA, Food Ingredients North America. Of course, our major partnership that we've got with SupplySide West, and we've got 3 really great workshops tied in with them, including plant-based beverages and sweeteners. So if you're a food and beverage supplier, a formulator, we've got you covered with those sessions.
That is great, Sandy. I really appreciate that, because a lot of times people think supply side, it's really kind of like a supplement focus, but it's more than that. It's all the things. It's like you have functional ingredients, and where can you apply them? You can apply them. There's so much innovation in beverages, and so you could put your things there. So there's lots of different product formats, and so that's what we offer at SupplySide West, is the world of interesting, notable, nutritional, functional bioactives, right? Yes. So thanks. Steve, any parting thoughts before we turn it over to our next segment here?
Viva Las Vegas.
Oh, the Las Vegas love. We'll all be there, and that'll be good. And so now, just a couple of weeks ago, we had with our sister company, New Hope Network, had Natural Products Expo East in Philly, and that was a raucous good time. And I sat down there with Erik Goldman. Now, he's the founder and an editor of Holistic Primary Care, which is a publication that brings the integrative and the complementary to the MD world. And so, Charlie, why don't you run this interview, and let's get a little into what's going on in the holistic world today. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week. Hey, Todd Runestad here. Another edition of the Toddcast here on Insider in the afternoon. We are here at Natural Products Expo East. I'm here with Erik Goldman, who is the editor and co-founder of Holistic Primary Care publication. This has been going on since as long as I've been in the business, for 24 years. You've probably been along right around there.
We're in our 22nd year.
22nd, all right.
Hello, everybody out there in New Hope land.
That's right, yeah.
That one on.
Yeah, that one. So yeah, Erik's been on the show before when we talked about psychedelics. I see psychobiotics is now a thing, and is this the gut-brain axis that we're talking about?
This is the gut-brain axis that we're talking about, yes. This is a whole new, well, it's not so new actually. There's people who've been quietly doing research on how gut bacteria affect things like our sleep cycles and our behavior and our mood. But all of a sudden, with so much excitement about probiotics over the last few years, it's coming to light now, and there's a number of companies that are developing products that will help us leverage that knowledge in a medically useful way.
It's the microbiome, and it's more than just gut health. It's really like we're all microbiome. We are the microbiome.
We are the microbiome,
and we're living in it.
And if you delve even a little bit into this research, it will start to blow your mind, because it really does raise the question of what does it mean to be human.
That's right. Yeah. Who's really running the show here? We got 10 trillion bacteria in us. There's more bacteria than there is human cells.
Yes, and if they're not happy, we're not happy. So there's obviously a lot of unhappy bacteria out there, because there's a lot of unhappy people, right? So,
right, that's right.
It's a very interesting field, and I think we're going to see more and more of that kind of innovation coming out of that line of research.
So psychobiotics. Now, this would be specific bacteria that has an effect on your mood or your cognition?
Exactly. They're identifying strains and types of bacteria and strains within those types that influence different aspects of our brain chemistry, our nervous system function.
So Grace Slick was right. Feed your head.
Feed your head the right probiotics.
The right probiotics. Remember what the Dharma said, feed your head the right probiotics.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So another thing here, I noticed in 2 consecutive issues we have COVID.
Yeah.
And why
COVID.
wouldn't we have COVID? Like holistic primary care, so you're linking the physician community to the sort of the natural products,
healthcare
the
space.
holistic, healing
Absolutely.
and all that stuff, complementary and alternative, medicine, things like that. So, what's the story with COVID and complementary medicine?
Well, how
There's a
long
lo-
do we have?
I know,
That's
well,
a very long conversation.
We have 12 minutes.
Short of it is, obviously there's a lot of controversy, but one of the many things that COVID really revealed is you mentioned in previous interviews how in poor shape many people in the country are,
Right.
and how fragmented our healthcare system is, and our system simply was not ready to deal with something like this. And there still really is no conventional drug therapy for COVID. A lot of people trying a lot of things, experimenting with a lot of things, but there's no FDA-approved drug for COVID. There are vaccines, obviously, but there's still a huge space, you could say, for how do we improve our immune systems through diet, lifestyle, nutrition, supplementation. How do we improve our overall resilience, health status, improving, because there's so many pre-existing conditions that many people have that predispose them to either getting COVID or getting severe cases of COVID. And a lot of that is simply lifestyle and diet, plain and simple. And so there's I think a real opportunity for the natural medicine practitioners, be they naturopaths or holistic MDs, functional medicine doctors, to basically prove the value of this approach. And I think that is happening out in the field.
Right. I think there was a huge miss in messaging around just the new news where the CDC came out with their recommendations, and then just today that recommendation got slightly tweaked by, I guess, someone at the FDA. But the message is, you don't need the 3rd shot unless you're like a specific type of person, which is like a frontline healthcare worker. But the fact of the matter is, if you have one of these comorbidities, obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, you need that 3rd shot. Like, you would be one of those special people, and guess what? That's the majority.
Half the country, easily.
Yeah, more than half the country. So it's like the message should have been, most people need it unless you're like perfectly healthy and not overweight and don't have blood sugar issues and your heart's perfectly fine. And it's like, and we all know that's a small number of Americans.
Yeah.
Like, that could have been the message, but instead the message is like, you don't really need it, unless you're, someone special. And it's like, we're all special.
Yeah, and that pre-existing condition thing is tricky because as a general rule, it's true statistically that if you have diabetes, obesity, heart disease, asthma, et cetera, you're more at risk for COVID. But
you'll suffer worse outcomes.
You'll suffer worse outcomes, and that's as a general broad stroke rule, true. However, there are young and healthy, yoga people, and I know the daughter of a very prominent holistic physician who got very, very sick with this, and she was super healthy. So it's not, everybody wants to simplify this. And it's human nature to want to simplify complex problems. This is a complex problem, this COVID thing. And, whether you're going with the simple broad stroke solution of vaccines are going to fix everything, or you're believing that God's going to protect you, or you're believing that, if I just take enough vitamin D, I'm going to be fine. It's like, we're all playing statistical odds here.
Well, so one of the headlines here is the Biden COVID response plan overlooks vitamin D and nutrition.
Yes.
So vitamin D is sort of like an easy story. That's been the most studied nutrient as it relates to COVID. I think we're up to 70 odd studies, and generally speaking, it shows if you have high blood levels, like above 38 nanograms per milliliter, you're not going to get it. And if you're under 10, you're going to die. You know,
Yeah.
and so there is this correlation, right? Which
Yeah,
of
but
course does not connote causality.
Right, and that's what
necessarily.
we're really missing is, unless something's been published that I haven't seen recently, which is possible because it's just like a deluge of information coming out about COVID. But what we don't have is a prospective study where you've got, 5,000 people who have low vitamin D and 5,000 people who have high vitamin D taking supplements, and you track them for a year and you see the COVID rates. That's what we need, and that's what we need in a lot of nutrition. Honestly, we don't have the prospective controlled studies.
Yeah,
so we're drawing
with the baseline, like you have to have the baseline
baseline.
of those levels at the start of the study. So many nutrition studies don't have that.
And a lot of them are based on self-reporting. So, you remember what you ate 3 days ago? I don't. But,
Yeah,
that's a
not
lot
at
of studies are based on well, yeah, I think I ate fish, and I think I, so this is a challenge in our field in general. And, but when you have that ambiguity playing out in a situation where people want clear answers because, hey, do I open my business? Do I don't open my business? Do I open my school district? Do I don't open my school district?
Yeah.
Do I have an expo? Do I not have an expo? It becomes a really, really, you want a clear answer. And unfortunately, science isn't like that, especially when it's happening on the fly like this. So it's very tricky, and the doctors are all trying to figure it out, whether they're working in conventional settings or in holistic medicine.
And so what's the nutrition opportunity that a physician could, I hate to use the word capitalize on, but that could be helpful to people during these COVID times?
Well, I think one of the big areas that's going to be it's funny to talk about opportunity, but I think there's a need, is among people who have the so-called long COVID, the long hauler syndrome.
Right.
What starts to happen is that after people get through that acute phase, basically it becomes a chronic disease. So suddenly people who had formerly been pretty healthy, now if they didn't already have like obesity or diabetes or something like that, they've got this chronic quasi-autoimmune condition because it does trigger all these immune system reactions. And they start to look like lupus, they start to look like rheumatoid arthritis. And that's not unique to this virus because there's other viruses that can trigger, Epstein-Barr can trigger a lot of complex symptomatology that goes on for years and years.
Right. But at least that one just comes from kissing the wrong person.
Yeah, this comes from who knows.
Right? Kissing the wrong bat? I don't know.
Kissing the wrong bat. But I think they're, that once someone is out of the acute phase, then they're in that primary care space. They're looking for how do I manage this in a long-term way. And I think there's a lot that can be done with nutrition and lifestyle modification. I mean, again, it comes back to eating well, minimizing inflammatory foods and lifestyle factors.
Right. So that's a message that doctors can take to patients. Like, I suppose even if they're seeing patients for something else not COVID related, and it's like, hey, you're overweight, obesity is a comorbidity for COVID. You really want to work like now, and people might hear that message more. It's like people will stop smoking when the doctor says, if you don't stop smoking, you're going to be dead in 6 months.
Some people will.
Okay.
So it's very interesting about that because people perceive risk. It's a risk. One of the interesting things that I got out of this whole COVID experience is that everybody has his or her own unique kind of calculus around benefit and risk. And that goes not just for, like, do I go to the concert or not, but all kinds of things. And we're making these calculations all the time, and in COVID, it's a particular thing. So some people will respond to that, like, hey, you don't want to get COVID, you're worried about that, lose the weight, do the lifestyle program.
Right.
Some people, it's not going to motivate because they're not motivated by fear in that way. Or the benefit of whatever they think they're doing, or what they're enjoying about their current food lifestyle is so great that they're not going to overcome it with a fear message. Yeah. So it's very tricky, and I think that's one of the aspects of holistic medicine is like, who are you with? Like, it's not a blanket approach. You're dealing with one person who has a unique set of needs and values and situations, and you have to work within that.
Yeah. So what are some other holistic medicine messages that physicians can talk to patients about? during these COVID times? You know, is this like acupuncture or meditation or massage? You know?
Well, I think all those things are, good stress reduction. That's
Right.
always going to be beneficial. I mean, the impact of stress on the overall vitality
Right.
is huge.
Right.
And
That
it's
might be
been
the
interesting.
number one aging thing is stress. You know, it's right up there.
And COVID certainly added a lot of stress into people's lives.
Right.
On the other hand, a lot more people are working from home and not having to do that hour and a half commute to the office and back
Right.
every day. So
Yeah.
COVID's kind of reshuffled the board, but
Right.
I think the food as medicine message is really resonating in a way now that it's been coming a long time, but I think the COVID thing really put a point on that, both for regular people who are suddenly spending more time at home, cooking at home, looking for new ways to incorporate healthy recipes into their weekly, monthly diets.
Yeah.
And then on the physician side, I think, again, people are realizing, yeah, you can't fix everything with pharmaceuticals. Just
Right,
can't.
right. But yeah, it's an interesting opportunity to reset, and just how like supplement buys skyrocketed last year, but they're not dropping back down. There's like this new normal of people that are like, oh yeah, maybe I want to be healthier just in general. Like maybe it's an opportunity for multivitamins. Just like, hey, let's just be healthier. Let's eat a little healthier. Because there's this thing knocking on our door out there, and whatever we can do, even though you can't say that supplements or foods or anything like specifically cures COVID, there are things that you can do to make yourself a little healthier so that when it comes, you won't suffer that same outcome. And so that's the nutrition message. That's even the supplement message too, right?
Yeah, and I think that really is catching on. I mean, it's a long time coming. Unfortunately, the medical system in which many practitioners are still working doesn't allow for that, account for that, reimburse for that.
Right.
So much of the products, the services, all these things are out-of-pocket expenses. And a lot of people can't afford them,
Right.
or really struggle to afford them. So, there's the micro level changes, individual lives, and then there's these macro systemic changes. Like I don't know if you've ever interviewed or spoken with Dean Ornish, but I mean it's amazing how much research that guy has done. And he'll joke about it. He says like, whoever thought you'd have to work this hard to prove that vegetables are healthy? But, it's
Right.
really true. He spent his life, his career, proving that vegetables can reverse disease.
Right. Right.
And still the insurance companies aren't on board with that. So.
Right. Well, I mean, that's something that you could do with food stamps or something like that. It's like, stop subsidizing cheese doodles and start subsidizing cheese, and not American cheese, which isn't real cheese.
Right. You can use your food stamps to buy Coke and Pepsi, but you can't use them to buy dietary supplements.
Yeah, right.
That's the most ridiculous thing
Yeah.
in the world.
Part of the systemic problems that is trying to be fixed by holistic primary care. Erik Goldman here. Thanks for joining us again, Erik. Really
Thank you,
appreciate
and thanks
that.
for watching. Be healthy, everybody.
All right.
Thanks, Todd.